Well, it appears that pretty much all of us are here. Certainly we have a quorum at this point, so I would call to order the 13th regular meeting of the Board of Directors of SAD 52, and if Yuri could lead us in the pledge, that would be most appreciated. Thank you. So our first order of business for this evening will be to act on the minutes of the 12th regular meeting, and that was March 3rd. Any errors or omissions in those? Seeing none, we'll accept those under general consent. That brings us to communications. Kim.
All right, thank you, Betsy. I'd like to report the following resignations. Chelsea Perry, Leavitt Area High School Special Education Ed Tech 2 for the Inspire program, effective March 18th. Wendy Anderson, Green Central School Special Education Teacher, effective April 1. Brianna DeGon, Leavitt Area High School Chemistry Teacher, effective April 8. And Heather Upchurch, Leeds Central School Grade 3 Teacher, effective June 15.
Thank you. That brings us to our budget work session. And for this evening's session, we will be reviewing warrant articles 8, 9, 10, and 14. We have on our agenda any revisit list for articles 1 and 2. There were no items that were placed on the revisit list, so that's a pretty short list. And I will, just from a process standpoint, remind folks that we have executive summaries, board members. For each of these warrant articles, we have line-by-line detail in each of the warrant articles. We'll proceed through that after Superintendent Brandt gives us a bit of a refresh on where we're at in the process.
Thank you. So our initial proposed budget reflects an overall tax impact of 3.8%, and there are several requests for needs in the schools. Tonight, and we've talked about those through warrant article 1 regular instruction and in special education. This evening, we are going to review transportation, facilities maintenance, debt service, and food service. And Business Manager Flanagan will be leading us through that line by line.
Thank you for reviewing the process for us, and we'll get started right on warrant article 8, and that is transportation. So transportation, page 1 of 1. Questions on page 1. And a reminder from a process standpoint to board members, if there's an item that you find somewhere in this particular warrant article or any of the others and you would like to either ask administrators for more information than what they're providing this evening, or if you would like to put it in our revisit list for additional discussion, we'd like to have a motion and a second in order to do that. And then we can take it up when we move to that next meeting on March 24th for additional discussion. So page 1 on transportation. I had a question on page 1. There's administrator salaries in there. Dean, is that? We're good. Thank you. Dean didn't realize this was going to be quite as much of a trick to get that microphone. Sorry about that.
This one's good, I think. So in that line, you actually have two positions. So you have your transportation coordinator, and you have half of the salary for your director of operations.
So a follow-up question on that. At this point, that director position is unfilled, is that correct?
That is correct.
Other questions on page 1? Crystal?
Diesel and gasoline at this point, do we feel like we need to increase that more? Or, I know there was a buffer put in, but do we feel like that's still enough?
What I'm going to say is, yes, it probably should be increased at this point based on what we're seeing happening out there in the ever-changing market. I've chatted with a few other school districts along with our fuel suppliers, and they're feeling that $5 a gallon is not unreasonable. And just to clarify, right now we have $3 a gallon for the diesel. That's what's in the budget.
So what are we paying right now?
If I heard the question correctly, right now for this year, because we had taken advantage of the pre-buy actually 2 years ago now, $2.12 a gallon.
So we're locking in at that price?
Right now, there are no contracts to be locked into.
So as a follow-up to Crystal's question then, is there a dollar figure you have in mind, Dean, that we should adjust by in this particular area?
Yeah, I would suggest for a diesel account, 45,000 gallons is the estimated gallonage, and at $5, that would bring that account to 225,000, and that's an increase of $90,000 over what's currently in that line.
So for clarification for board members and everybody else following along as well, generally speaking, in years past, if we have something that is a suggested update by an administrator of that sort, that's something that doesn't necessarily require board action to change that. Is that, I feel like it's jeopardy, like is that your final answer, or is that something you would prefer that the board put on the revisit list to make sure that we are comfortable with whatever number we have in there?
Certainly that is my recommendation, and again, I'm kind of new to the process as well, so I'm going to guess that you probably want to put it on a revisit list just to have a more of a discussion. And also, while we're talking about fuel, energy, the gasoline account as well, estimating 17,000 gallons in terms of the quantity, and that one also at $5 a gallon would be an increase of $36,000 over what's there.
So do we have somebody who would be interested in making a motion to put that on the revisit list so we can talk about that? Kyle? Thank you. Second, Crystal? So for that March 24th meeting, we'll have on our revisit list to discuss in a little bit more detail and follow up on both gas and diesel numbers. Yuri?
I would make the motion that we would put the first line 51040 on the revisit list. I know that that's a position that we've had a hard time filling, and I think that we should maybe have a little bit more discussion on that salary for that position.
Do we have a second to put that one on the revisit list? Thanks, Joanne. So just to make sure I keep the running list accurate, we have on the revisit list line number 2700-51040, and that's the line that encompasses both the transportation and facilities director and another position, transportation coordinator, as well as gas and diesel line items. Anything else on page 1? If there's nothing else on page 1, we'll move to page 2. Questions on page 2? Yuri?
Line 57300, transportation equipment other. I was just curious what that is.
Yes, the increase in that line is the digital radios that were part of what was prepaid in the FY22 budget.
So that shows as a, just to clarify, that shows as an increase this year of 15,000, primarily because that was one of the items that was prepaid last year. Like if we look back to 2021, we were 17,709, and the 21-22 number is 4,500, and then we're back out this year.
Yes, that is correct.
Thank you. Other questions on page 2? Questions on page 2? If not, page 3 appears to just be headings. So I'm going to assume that there are no questions on page 3. Anything else on transportation? If not, we'll move on to facilities. Page 1 of facilities maintenance. Question on line 3 of that page, and the last digits of the line are 56220, and that's that one specifically is Turner Primary School electricity. What, Dean, could you describe to us where we're at on electricity?
Yes, with electricity, I have budgeted a 10% increase, and that represents the portion that is comes through the actual supply. And that's the part we have little control over. We have a contract with Maine Power Options for the other piece of that, so it's kept that increase down. And that is true of all of our schools for electricity.
Thank you. Other questions on page 1 for facilities? Yuri?
And this is true throughout, but for the property insurance, is that value locked in yet, or is that similar to our other insurances where we'll update that number a little later on?
So the question was around that property insurance, and we see it in each of the locations at 20%.
Yes, that is correct. And I worked with MSMA on that to get that estimate.
And I think Yuri's question was also twofold in that that 20% is a known quantity at this point, or that is not exact yet?
It's not exact. That is the estimate provided by MSMA based on what they're seeing out there in the reinsurance market.
Thank you. Other questions on page 1? Crystal?
Just across the board at all schools that use oil, are those going to need to be bumped up as well? Fuel, oil, propane?
That's a great question, and I'll take the fuel oil question first, if I can get to the correct page here. The fuel oil, the heating oil, the number 2 heating oil, I have increased those by approximately 10%. And what I've learned as I've gone through these accounts and all of our heating systems here is that our wood chip boiler does provide the lion's share of the heat to several of the buildings, which is an advantage to us because we are in a contract for the wood chips at $81 per ton. And so what you're seeing there with the heating oil for this building in particular is oil to get us through some of the shoulder seasons. And I think with some proper management of that as we go through this next year, I think we can minimize our usage of the oil, so I'm not as concerned about that.
I think that there was a question on propane as well, is that?
Yes, propane, forecasting a 10% increase there as well. And I'll be working with our propane provider to see what efficiencies we can achieve there as well.
Thank you. Other questions on page 1? Moving on to page 2. Questions on page 2? If there are no questions on page 2, we can move to page 3. Questions on page 3? On page 3, it appears that TMS property insurance is projected at a different increase than the other areas, the other buildings, grounds.
Yes, that is correct, and that is based on the current year's expenditure was higher than anticipated, so that one is 4% higher than the others.
Thank you. Other questions on page 3? If none, moving on to page 4. Questions on page 4? If there are no questions on page 4, we can certainly move on to page 5. Questions on page 5? Yuri.
For the district-wide line number ending in 52040, is that reflecting a additional person?
Yes, that is correct.
Other questions on page 5? If there are no other questions on page 5, we'll move to page 6. Questions on page 6? So on page 6, line 57300, there's a maintenance equipment increase.
Hang on a second.
If that one's easier to come back to, we could certainly
Yeah, I'll have
do
to
that
go back
as
to
well.
that. Okay, sorry about that.
So the other question on page 6 to, maybe Dina, if you could remind us on as well, we have some lines that look like they were new in this 22-23 budget, and they're around facilities, minor capital, principal, interest, and buildings and ground, minor capital.
Yes, there are a few pieces to that. The first line for 78,500, that is lease purchase for it's a gasoline tank, because we currently have none on site. And that would save us money, certainly in the long run. And the other part to that is it's a $58,000 request in there, and it's a matching piece to what they call the COPS grant. And the significance of that is when we put that money in there, we can actually get purchasing power of triple that amount back. So that'll go a long way towards a lot of our facility and security pieces. And then the last two lines there as well, those are actually the Siemens Phase 1 and Phase 2 projects.
Dean, can you refresh our memory that those two items were things that we had prepaid with funds that were not expended during our year of rather unusual operations?
Yes, thank you for reminding me of that. Yes, indeed, they were prepaid, so they're showing up here as an increase.
Thank you. Other questions on page 6? Kyle?
How big is that tank, the gasoline tank? Talking-
So the question was about the gas tank, and Dean, maybe if you tell us a little bit more about that project, that would be helpful.
Yes, certainly. That tank is approximately 4,000 gallons. And what that is it'll allow us to dispense gasoline just as we do with our diesel pump that's located near the middle school.
What's that project consist of?
That project would be putting in the tank and also any of the pump mechanisms that are needed to dispense, along with the required safety systems as well.
Thank you. Other questions on page 6? If not, moving on to page 7, which is the summary page. Any questions on page 7? If not, moving on to warrant article 10, debt service. Questions on page 1 of 1 on debt service? If not, can move on to warrant article 14, food service. So I think it might be helpful for Dave to maybe remind us, or Dean to remind us how this warrant article works from the standpoint of we have a lot of detail in the warrant article, and then we have kind of that relates to how the program pays for itself and is self-supporting by and large, but does give us additional detail on that.
Yeah, so given that we're an enterprise program, the debits and credits that we accrue they don't hit the general budget. So the revenue that we draw in as a department pays the expenses that you're seeing in front of you. The only thing that hits the general fund is the local subsidy request, which is 0 this year.
Thank you. Questions on these detailed pages in food service? Page 1. If they're not on page 1, we'll move to page 2. Questions on page 2? No questions on page 2. We'll go to page 3. Any questions on page 3? If not, that brings us to the conclusion of our warrant articles that we're considering line by line this evening. And just to make sure everybody is clear on what we have on our revisit list, hopefully Kim is keeping track of this as well. So we have on that list the line item that includes the Transportation and Facilities Director. We have lines reflecting gas and diesel. And we will revisit those at our next budget work session, which is March 24th, 2022, here at Levitt. So our list of items that we'll be covering that evening are the revisit list for warrant articles 8, 9, 10, and 14, warrant article 4, other instruction, warrant article 5, student and staff support, warrant article 6, system-wide administration, warrant article 7, school administration, and warrant article 18, adult education. I'm not aware of any other items that we need to take up as relate to the budget this evening. So we'll move on to item 5, adjustments to the agenda.
Yes, I have a request for the board to move item 10.3, which is discussion on district-wide school climate, to immediately following the superintendent's report, which we put in immediately before public comment, so people can hear and then public comment.
Any objections from board members to moving that item to directly follow the superintendent's report? Seeing none, that's how we'll proceed on that. That brings us to committee reports. Finance Committee, Yuri. Has not met. PTB, Jessica.
We have not met this week.
Curriculum Policy, Joanne.
We have not met either.
Student Representative, Tristan. And I think there's a microphone somewhere close to you.
Sorry. The initial student response to masking, optional masking, has been very positive so far. I've heard no personal complaints about the policy, and students seem to be happy no longer have to wear a mask. Besides that, sophomore class is familiarized with the LRTC program, and they seem positive as well. It's a pretty short week. That concludes student representative's report.
Thank you, Tristan. We do not have individual separate administrator reports. That'll take us right to the superintendent's report. Kim.
Okay, and when we get into item 10.3, principals will also be speaking. That's really in lieu of their administrative reports. I have recently met with the Leeds Central School staff, the Levitt Area High School staff, and the Turner Primary School staff to review the proposed FY23 budget and where we are in the process. I look forward to meeting with staff at Green Central School, Turner Elementary School, and Tripp Middle School over the next 2 weeks to do the same. Assistant Superintendent Gillis will be speaking a little bit tonight as well. She is supporting students and staff at Turner Elementary School at this time. She has been working with parents and families there, and she recently sent out some information about social media that she will touch on a little bit further. Area superintendents met on yesterday, to review the 2022-23 school calendar. Area schools who send students to LRTC, which is our Lewiston Regional Technical Center, must have no more than 5 dissimilar days in their school calendars. So I have sent preliminary thoughts to principals for feedback, and we'll be discussing next year's calendar with the TTA leadership as well. And I will plan to bring a proposed 22-23 school calendar to the board in late April. So the data that we have for this evening related to COVID-19 is that Androscoggin County is now in medium, no longer in high. Our vaccination rates for students and by town remain the same as they were last week, which is that we have between 50 and 54% of our students vaccinated, 64% of residents in Green, 62% in Leeds, and 66% in Turner who are vaccinated. For numbers of positive cases since last week, in Green Central School, we have had 1. In Leeds Central School, 2. In Turner Primary School, 0. Turner Elementary School, we've had 3. And at Tripp Middle School, we have had 2 positive cases. And at the high school, we've had 3 positive cases. We also are doing the pool testing, as that is a way to find out who might be carrying the virus but who is asymptomatic, which is very helpful. So number of positive pools for Green Central School. A reminder that Green Central School has between 16 and 17 pools. There were 2 positive pools this week. In Leeds Central School, which has between 6 and 8 pools each week, they had 0 positive pools. For Turner Primary School, who has 18 pools each week, they had 2 positive pools. For Turner Elementary School, who has 6 pools, 0 positive pools. For Tripp Middle School, that has 8 or 9 pools, they had 0 positive pools. And the high school, that has 10 or 11 pools each week, had 0 positive pools, which is wonderful. The data from yesterday was that total hospitalized, 131. Total of those in critical care, 29, and total of those on ventilators, 10.
as we discussed on adjustments to the agenda, we'll move right to item 10.3, and that's discussion on district-wide school climate. So I'm going to turn that back over to Superintendent Brandt, because I know she had indicated that we have individual administrators that will also speak to this as well.
Thank you. So the pandemic has certainly presented many challenges. Schools were fully remote in the spring of 2020, in the hybrid model in the 2021 school year, and then back to 5 days of school each week this year, but with a large number of students in and out of quarantine for the first half of this year. There has been a tremendous amount of disruption in schools and for families for an extended period of time now. Last year, with very small classes during the hybrid model, we had very, very few behavior issues. This year, schools are seeing more behaviors and mental health issues than they have seen in the past. This is not a surprise, as what we see in schools is a reflection of the broader society. So MSAD 52 is addressing behaviors and mental health issues by providing some very good services, by teaching students skills to promote social emotional growth, skills to address negative peer interactions and bullying, and skills to cope with stress and anxiety. This is ongoing work. Schools also have intentional structures that foster positive peer-to-peer and student-to-adult relationships, which we know are critical for learning and support. So some of the services that we have in place, and you will hear a little bit more about this when principals talk. School counselors provide lessons at the elementary level and are available in all MSAD 52 schools. Social work and spur-wink services are available for identified students. High school students also have the support of a substance use counselor, who is also a social worker. And at every level, we have small groups of students with the same teacher every day for part of each day, or at least several times a week. Morning meetings at the elementary level, crew in the middle school, and Hornet Prime Time at the high school, they all represent opportunities for ongoing and intentional chances each week to connect with, to listen to, and to support students. These times help to foster positive peer-to-peer relationships and supportive student-adult relationships. The school board has continued to support class sizes that optimize student-teacher ratios for learning and support as well. So we have good supports in place, but what we're seeing this year is different and more than what we've seen in the past. So we continue to think about what more can be done to support student behaviors and mental health. A couple things that we're putting in place this year, and you may hear Teresa Gill speak a little more about these. We are going to provide mental health first aid training for staff, and we are going to use ESSER funding to provide social work positions to serve the general education students in the elementary schools. This is important because we have social workers available in the schools. They work almost exclusively with identified students. We're looking to use the ESSER funds for social work services for general education students as well, to help meet some of those issues that are ongoing. We also have JICK-EI, and that is the bullying reporting form. We've put that on the front page of the website under quick links so that people have immediate access to that at any time, day or night. We are, of course, all modeling for students all the time as well. If students see the adults in their lives speaking respectfully and working together to solve problems, they are more likely to behave in the same way. The single most powerful tool to support student behaviors and mental health is collaboration between the schools and parents. That is our best strategy, our best tool. Last week, the board voted to send out a survey. The administrative team has discussed the goal of the survey and what we would love to see from the data from that survey. We would really like to have a survey that gives us data that we can respond to. Data that will allow us to develop plans for improvements. We would like a survey that will give us data over time so we can see if the things that we are doing to improve school experiences for students are in fact working over time. And we want a full picture of how students, parents, and staff are experiencing school right now after 2 years of education and family disruption during the pandemic. Before the pandemic, our school community participated in the Positive Behavioral Interventions and Supports School Climate Survey, which means we already have a year of data pre-pandemic, which would be very good to be able to take a look at data now compared to what it was before the pandemic. So in summary, we are seeing more behavior and mental health issues than we have in the past. Again, it's not a surprise. What we see in schools is a reflection of the broader society. MSAD 50 schools have some good supports in place, and we are taking action to put further training and supports in place, and believe that the PBIS School Climate Survey will give us data that we can respond to by developing further plans for improvement and monitoring over time. Teachers, staff, and administrators take negative peer interactions and bullying very seriously. There is no magic bullet, but as I said earlier, the single most powerful tool to support students is collaboration with our parents. And at this time, I'm going to ask that individual principals speak with a little bit more detail about what's happening in their schools.
Good evening. As we started the school year, we had an inkling that perhaps we would need to have some additional support for students around mental health and as well around behavior. You've heard me use the phrase before, getting into school shape. That's something that we have to do every year, and that's something that we're still working on right now. And I don't think that we can understate, or overstate, I should say, the impact of that interruption that Mrs. Brandt talked about over the last couple of years. This challenge isn't unique to us. I meet on a regular basis with my high school principal colleagues around the county, and they are working through a lot of, if not the exact same issues that we are. We share ideas back and forth about how they're working in their schools. I share ideas about how we're working in our schools, and we continue to, we'll meet again next week to talk more about that and develop strategies amongst the county is how we're addressing this. Specifically here at the high school, we do have a number of supports in place for students who are struggling. They range from classroom teachers and HBT advisors up through guidance and social work, which I'll mention in just a minute, administrative staff, and other adults in the building. Specifically around the HBT groups, we try to keep those as small as we can so that each student has an adult that they meet with every day in a small group setting and can check in whether that's academically or otherwise. In our guidance office, we have both our guidance counselors as well as social workers. We have our regular guidance counselors, but we also have a substance abuse counselor. She is also able to provide social work service. We have a special education social worker, and we also have a spur wing social worker. She's an out-of-district employee, but she has an office in our guidance office. I think it's important to note in this particular case that those caseloads are, if not at capacity, very close to capacity. This isn't unique necessarily for this year, but I just wanted to note it because I think it's important to know. Some of the more common behavior issues that we're seeing seem to arise from understanding and following through on general expectations, whether that be in a classroom, the cafeteria, the hallway, or interactions between peers. And we have been and continue to work on reestablishing those expectations. The student behavior around the building has been a topic at recent faculty meetings as well as building leadership team meetings. And one of the steps we've taken is to revive that PBIS work that we had done a couple of years ago. We had done it and it was in place, and as it turns out, it didn't transfer over the interruption. So we're getting that back up and engaging with that. We continue to recognize, as part of that, we continue to recognize positive student behavior through our Student of the Quarter Awards, as well as our Positive Star program, where staff members recognize positive student behavior with a star, and then we have a monthly drawing with that. We're also in the beginning stages of engaging students to help and assist in brainstorming goals and action strategies to help with this work. I recently had students approach me and volunteer to assist with this. In addition to those volunteers, we're organizing representation from our NHS, our Key Club, and our Student Council. So students will be integral part of working through some of this and finding solutions. Our work around reestablishing routines and expectations continues, as I mentioned, and will be the focus of, or one of the focus areas of our March 18th in-service day when we're here all together as a staff. Our intention being to fine-tune the strategies that we're or have been implementing and to continue to support students as we move forward through the spring. I don't want to give the impression that there aren't good things going on here either, but I also don't want to diminish the struggles that we're having. They're real, and we're working to address them, but at the same time that we're working to address those, there are some positive things that are happening. Specifically, just recently, the Key Club worked with the Red Cross and ran an exceptionally successful blood drive here at school. So successful that the Red Cross called the next day and strong-armed them into doing another one in May. So there's another one coming up in May. We're coming off, you've heard Tristan, we're coming off a very successful Winter Carnival that was organized by Miss Harris and our Student Council. And that was a very positive day. Additionally, our Unified Schools Club recently sponsored an Hbt Poster Contest where HBTs created posters depicting what inclusion means to them and what it looks like here at Levitt. It's nice to go around the building and see those posters displayed on classroom doors. Students did a great job with those. Specifically around Unified Schools Club, I would be remiss if I didn't mention it is bigger now than it's ever been. We have, I don't know what the exact number is on the roster, so to speak, but I know that Mrs. Dingley has trouble fitting them all in her classroom. So those are very energetic and well-attended meetings. As I said, I don't want to blow sunshine into places it doesn't belong, and I don't want to overstate the struggles that we're having. There are struggles. We have been and continue to work through those. At the same time, we continue to seek out and acknowledge positive things as they occur. Thank you.
Thank you. Who's next?
Good evening. Pleased to have a few minutes to share with you some of the things that we do to support our students at Green Central School. It's a little nicer. As Superintendent Brandt noted, that our students are experiencing more frequent challenges, including mental health and behavioral issues than we've seen in recent memory. And as Principal Shaw pointed out, in my professional experience, I'm in the process of taking a couple of online classes, so I have the privilege of being able to connect through Zoom with administrators throughout the United States, some just in Maine, some throughout the U.S., Canada, South America. And when we go into our breakout rooms, we kind of talk shop a little bit. And it's, sometimes you think, man, am I the only one? And just no matter which breakout room I've been in, we're hearing again and again that our kids are having a challenge right now. And, obviously it's up to us to do our very best to support them. So yeah, no matter where. I don't know if that's a great thing. It's mildly reassuring to know it's not in isolation, but yet it's unfortunate at the same time. And of course, though our classroom teachers are not mental health professionals, we definitely work collaboratively on a variety of practices to address student needs and create a welcoming and supportive classroom environment. We also rely, as Superintendent Brandt mentioned, on the critical relationship with our parents to support that collaboration to support all of our students. So for example, in a classroom that you would find in any of our elementary schools, we always start with a morning meeting, and that morning meeting consists of 4 parts. There's a greeting, there's sharing, there's a group activity, and then morning message. We can get specific if folks have questions about that. But with the regular use of morning meeting, it sets a tone for respectful and engaged learning in a climate of trust. It builds and enhances connections among students and teachers. It merges academic, social, and emotional learning, motivates students by addressing the need to feel a sense of significance and belonging, and of course to have fun. And then by repeating that on a regular basis, daily, those ordinary moments of respectful interactions do create opportunities for students to internalize those practices. That's just a little snippet. An implemented multi-tiered system of supports, sometimes called PBIS, Positive Behavioral Intervention and Supports, is another piece of what we do. When students come to us, they have a variety of experiences from different households. Some things are allowed, some things are not, depending upon the household. So they come to us with that wide variety of what's expected. So that MTSS framework we use throughout the building. With that, the expectations that we need to see at Green Central are explicitly taught and they're practiced throughout the school year. That might be things like lining up cafeteria, expected behavior in the cafeteria, expected behavior on the playground, those types of things. And then that expected behavior is acknowledged with a Golden Gator ticket, which are highly prized. And you award that to a particular student along with the reason why. You don't just hand them out. It's verbalizing, wow, you really did a great job being responsible when you, whatever it happens to be, and you acknowledge that. Then the Golden Gators are put into bins for a weekly random drawing for the prize box in the office, actually now a prize bookcase. So that's kind of interesting. We're trying to be creative with that right now. We're doing it on the intercom. We're thinking about doing a live stream featuring Miss Chelsea actually doing the online drawing. So that could be really interesting. Please stay tuned for that. If a student struggles with mastering the expected behavior as necessary, the staff designs additional types of support to encourage the student, and that might include reteaching the expectations, more explicit instructions, more frequent check-ins. We use a system called check-in, check-out. Again, that's like another tier of PBIS. And then when a student might set a point goal for the day, they check in with somebody in the morning, they work through their day, they check out at night, and they are working toward attaining a particular goal. Might be a few minutes on an iPad or time with a staff member. That's a high commodity as well. And those expectations build skills for each student, and they're preventative measures versus punitive. Each classroom teacher facilitates a daily class meeting. We talked about that. Safe and consistent environment to learn, grow, and connect socially and emotionally. So again, MTSS, multi-tiered system of support, and student-centered responsive classrooms are foundations of that school-wide environment and positive atmosphere. We do have a longer-term goal. We are working toward implementing a student PBIS universal team and another program called Student Ambassadors. Please stay tuned for that as well. We also have monthly acknowledgements that are awarded at the end of each month to recognize a student or students in each class that exemplify a particular trait such as kindness, leadership, helpfulness, perseverance, etc. Student names are announced on the intercom. The certificate is awarded as well. We use other methods throughout the building to build school-wide community. We may have occasional dress-up days, sports day, mismatch day. Some of us, every day is a mismatch day, but the kids really like to be creative. Thankfully, we've also had opportunities to do school-wide wellness days. We did one earlier in the year, and we recently celebrated Winter Wellness Olympics Theme Day. That was right before February vacation. Activities included rotations for relay races and obstacle courses. There were cooperative activity challenges, including designing and creating a class flag as a group, and then building a snow fort as a team, and then placing your flag next to the class's fort. It was phenomenal to see so many. Unfortunately, we had the area at Green in the recreation area that still had lots of snow, and it was really amazing. One team decided to make their teacher a throne, so she was able to sit in the fort and supervise. So it ended up looking like a little village, and it was described by several kids as, quote unquote, the best day ever. So there's that. And of course, we have a school counselor that plays a vital role throughout Green Central. Using the structure that we have, Ms. Jennifer Simmons provides specific classroom lessons, as well as small and individual student check-ins and skill work based on student need. So I asked Ms. Simmons to describe a bit about what she does, and she was only too happy to provide some information. This is right from ASCA, the American School Counselor Association, information, let's see, it's called Student Standards, Mindsets, and Behaviors. So ASCA, the American School Counselor Association, has 36 ASCA student standards that identify and describe knowledge, attitudes, and skill development that students need to achieve academic success, career readiness, and social emotional development. The guidance curriculum is designed from a framework of non-cognitive factors and standards to build a program that helps students achieve their highest potential. The ASCA standards are based on a review of research and college, career, and life readiness documents that identify strategies influencing student achievement and academic performance. School counselors deliver the ASCA standards to all pre-K through 12 students in classrooms, groups, or individual settings in a manner that's appropriate for the student's developmental level or age. School counselors using the standards ensure equity and improve access for all students. So at Green Central School, we address teasing, bullying, and harassment in a variety of different ways. Of course, we use the PBIS, which I mentioned previously. Our 5th and 6th graders participate in adventure-based learning, which is a weekly challenge. The class is based on learning skills of communication, problem-solving, collaboration, inclusion, teamwork, compromise, leadership, resilience, and assertiveness. And then the following guidance units address teasing and bullying prevention in line with the ASCA standards. Defining teasing, bullying, and harassment, role-playing, being an upstander, being prepared and confident to handle situations. Support systems, empathy, Kelso choices, which are problem-solving choices defined, including role-playing. Friendship skills, inclusion activities, self-regulation and kindness, understanding emotions, coping strategies, I messages, building internal resiliency, understanding the brain and fight, flight, or freeze responses, choices and consequences, responsibilities, and growth mindset. And of course, Ms. Simmons is also highly responsive to the needs of particular classes. For example, if a teacher notices a class is having a general difficult time with a particular skill, Ms. Simmons is able to design a check-in or additional lesson to support the needs of that class. It's important to note that practicing particular needs or skills in isolation is not an effective practice. Rather, incorporating those essential skills into what we do during our daily practice is a much more effective way to promote student skill acquisition and well-being. So as we continue this journey with our students, we're excited to work on additional avenues of professional development to support our staff members who, in turn, support our students. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Good evening, I'm Ryan Patriot, the principal at Turner Primary School. And of course, if a child doesn't know how to read, we teach. If a child doesn't know how to swim, we teach. If a child doesn't know how to multiply, we teach. If a child doesn't know how to drive, we teach. And if a child doesn't know how to behave, we teach. So at Turner Primary School, our premises is around teaching appropriate behaviors in our classrooms. And we do that in a lot of ways. We have our 3 common expectations: safe, respectful, and responsible, and that's across all environments. And we take the students to each of those environments and we teach them what that looks like, what it sounds like, and then sometimes we talk about like imagining what could happen and what we do instead of. So that is how we start our year off. We go to each of those environments and teach what safe, respectful, and responsible look like. We do recognize students with our word of the month. This month the word is determined, so it's really exciting to hear students share examples of trying things that are hard and not giving up. And every month we have a different word, and we recognize students who exhibit that trait at the end of the month. We do provide every student access to our school counselor through weekly 40-minute instruction. And our school counselor does use the ASCA standards, which Principal Parker discussed. And one of the things is around positive, respectful, and supportive relationships with students, and our school counselor defines exactly what bullying is, defines the different kinds of bullying there are, and then defines how to respond to bullying. So the students actually role play and practice different strategies. The big one right now is around assertiveness, practicing saying, no, please stop, I don't like it when you. And so our students are practicing those skills, and those are really important. Like Principal Parker shared, we start every day with a morning meeting, and there's the different components Principal Parker talked about, but it's really just a way to start the day positively for students, and it's also a way for our professionals to kind of gauge where students are when they're coming into the building, and then providing them with supports if they need them. So if a student comes in upset off the bus, finding supports in place to help support that child with what their needs are. In pre-K and kindergarten, we implement the Second Step program, which is a lot more modeling, teaching, and practicing of appropriate and safe behaviors. And what happens is the teachers hold up a scenario in front of their students, and there's typically a picture of things going on, and they talk about what they do, how to respond, how to ask for help, things like that. And the pictures are things that the kids can relate to. And so that's our Second Step program that our classroom teachers in pre-K and K implement. We do have an incident referral form, and so every incident is recorded. We have staff supervising all of our areas of the school at recess, in the lunchroom, in the hallways, in the bathrooms, in the classrooms, things like that. We have staff there. And so if there's an incident that happens, it's documented, and then on the incident form, there's different interventions that are documented, what was used, whether it's conferencing with the student, having them take a break and stop and think about it, calling parents, making a plan on how we can make things better. And we have an advanced tier team and a universal team at each of our elementary schools. And because the incident forms are online, every week we meet and go over those incidents and talk about what we can do to help. So for example, if there was an increase of incidents happening during second grade recess time, then we might flood the recess with more supports and start leading some structured games and activities in hopes of minimizing any incidents happening in that, at that time or on that day of the week or at that location. And so we have an advanced tier team and a universal team that really look at those incident forms. And then also when students need support, we think about the different supports we have at our school and how we can help our students. So we have the school counselor, we have the social worker, we have the Spur-Wing counselor. We have Principal Parker talked a little bit about the check-in and check-out program. And so it's a program designed for students who need a little bit more feedback throughout the day. And so after each class, an adult comes in and talks to them about how they were able to meet their goal in each of those classes or in each of those locations. One particular parent who has a student on Owl Academy, she said it was okay to read this to you, but she said, "I've seen such a huge turnaround since they started the Owl Academy program for my child. Today they participated in a vertical challenge ski race and they did absolutely amazing, talking with the sponsors, playing with old and new friends, and did a wonderful job on the race course. They stood out to the race director who came up and gave them a medal for their sportsmanship and being so positive and fun. In the past, a new situation like this would have gone south for my child, but not this time, and it's been quite some time since we've had to leave an event early." So the Owl Academy, like Principal Parker shared, every day the student sets a goal for a particular behavior, and then they're given feedback. Usually it's about 8 times throughout the day. And then at the end of the day, they celebrate if they met their goal, and if they didn't meet their goal, they talk about what do you think we could do differently next time. And usually it's the same adult who checks in with them, so that way they're kind of getting more feedback throughout the day, so that they are more aware of what goals they're working on and how they're performing. I mentioned our school counselor not only delivers that whole class instruction, but they also provide small group instruction and one-on-one sessions for students who need them for a particular period of time. And then our social worker and Spur-Wing also provide the same. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Danielle Harris. I'm principal at Leeds Central School. I like to go last because I like to be able to say, we do just about all of those same things that the others do so that my speech can be a little bit shorter. Because we do collaborate as an elementary group of principals and we share ideas and we have the same mentality towards approaching our students. At Leeds Central School, we have a full-time school counselor and she does do the class lessons for 40 minutes each week. As Dr. Patry mentioned, his school uses second step in pre-K and pre-K and kindergarten, right? And I think across the district, all of our teachers have that program. But in my school, a few years ago, we decided to buy it for all grade levels. So my school counselor in her lessons does use the second step program. So I just wanted to give a little more about what that's all about. So the program is broken into 4 units for pre-K to 3. And the units are skills for learning, empathy, emotion management, and problem solving. And then within those units, each grade level is very slightly different, but they're generally things about learning to listen, focusing attention, following directions, self-talk for staying on task, and being assertive. And that's just under the category of skills for learning. And then in each of the other 3 units, such as empathy, emotion management, and problem solving, there's specific skills that they work on. Each year builds on the previous year, so for students that are in our building from year to year, each lesson that they have in one grade, the next year they'll have a similar lesson, but it will be more appropriate to their grade level as they grow. So that's an excellent program to make sure that we cover all of the skills that we're trying to teach for appropriate behavior. At Leeds Central School, we were able to have a social worker from Spurwink 1 day a week. I begged Spurwink to give me more, and they know that I want more. So that's where they actually work for Spurwink, and we just basically provide the space and we collaborate so that we make sure that the kids are getting what they need. But we could probably have a full-time Spurwink counselor there and keep her busy. So that's always something that we're hoping to get more of. Of course, district-wide, we do PBIS, so that's a big thing that goes on at Leeds Central School. The staff PBIS team meets every other week, and we're always looking at which students are having challenging behaviors and what we might do to support the staff and the student in order to be more successful. We also have a student PBIS team that meets weekly, and that gives students a chance to have a voice. For example, something may be going on the playground that teachers are unaware of, and they'll share that, and then we're able to address the problem. And that's been really positive as well. At Leeds, we've been very lucky to have small elementary classes, and that allows our teachers to have really good relationships with their students. It's someone that they know really, the student comes in knowing their teacher really well, and we do class meetings as well, like other schools do. And so they create a welcoming and supportive classroom environment for the students. One of the things Leeds has always been big about is doing after-school clubs, and that's had to be tamped down a little bit because of the COVID situation. But this year, we still managed to slip some of those in. We started with Lego Club. That's my school counselor, Liz Cook, does that every Wednesday afternoon after school. She has about 20 kids playing with Legos, and they love it. Mrs. Slovak and Mrs. Buckley have done a cross-country ski club when the conditions permitted. And they're real troopers out there with the kids cross-country skiing. Jennifer Gruber just started a crochet club because a student had told her that she'd like to learn how to crochet. And so she's like, well, why don't you stay after school one day? And then she's like, well, why don't I offer that to other students? I think she has about 10 students that started. And as more kids learn, they're going to be expanding that and opening it to more kids. And of course, Jeff Sear, my technology person, had a fantastic robotics club this fall. That was really amazing, and we probably should have him present on that sometime. Another thing that Leeds is really well known for is that it's a supportive parents, and that's another thing that COVID has been a little bit sad about, is that we used to have events almost monthly that involve families, and I'm really looking forward to getting back to normal so that we can do more things like that. We have, at Christmas time, they did manage to do a little drive-by lighten up LCS event. That was really fun. And we just did a fundraiser so that we can have an amazing field day this year. So we're really looking forward to having the most spectacular field day that we've had in a long time. We do Eagle tickets. Every school has their own mascot, so their ticket system is differently. But that's a way to positively acknowledge students. And they earn tokens. The whole school gets tokens to represent being safe and respectful and responsible. And then from the Eagle tickets, we also draw student names, and they get extra tokens if their name is drawn. Like I said, the class meetings are based on responsive classroom, or Jennifer Groover also did work over the summer and decided to implement Choose Love in her classroom, which is another available curriculum that's free. It's on the internet, and it's a very positive one that teaches students about courage, gratitude, forgiveness, and compassion in action. And I watched that happening in the classroom. She spread it to other teachers in our building are now using it as well. So there's just lots and lots of positive efforts to help our students to have a wonderful day when they come to Leeds Central School. So thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. So first of all, I'm going to speak on behalf of Jana Bates, who is not able to be here for Tripp Middle School. And she writes that Tripp Middle School has several proactive pieces in place to help support students socially and emotionally at school. A school counselor, a school social worker, spur-wink clinician, 30-minute crew period each day, and the curriculum is admin and teacher-driven to address team and school issues, as well as build relationships and foster healthy choice. Encouraging positive behaviors, kindness counts, student of the month, PBIS rewards, active supervision during transitions, admin greeting students at arrival, dismissal, and visiting classrooms daily. Tripp Middle School also has reactive pieces in place if students mistreat one another. Minor infractions are addressed by the classroom teacher and/or the school counselor. Major infractions are addressed by administration. Whenever possible, the restorative process is used, which includes students taking responsibility and accountability for their actions and making a plan to fix the harm caused and ensure it does not happen again. Substantiated cases of bullying and/or harassment are documented per district policy, and the steps outlined are followed. Okay, now I'm going to talk about Turner Elementary School. So I think most of you know, my name is Teresa Gillis, and I'm the Assistant Superintendent. Over the past several weeks probably, I've been asked to support Turner Elementary School, and I've been really happy to do so. So tonight I'm going to give an update on Turner Elementary School. And like Danielle Harris said, all of the pieces that were described by principals before me at the elementary level are in place. PBIS is used at Turner Elementary School. It's a framework for teaching children positive behaviors. We teach children how to be safe, respectful, and responsible across all areas. And like Principal Shaw said, not everything is wonderful. I would be remiss if I said to you everything's great and students are behaving well all the time. Some of the things that we have in place, in addition to morning meeting that the other schools have, and the guidance lessons, like the other schools, we have specialized groups where a school counselor might meet with a group of students for a friendship group, and they might meet 4 to 6 times and discuss how to be a friend, what friendship looks like, how to interact appropriately with others. So because we are experiencing challenges in student behavior, and because I really enjoy being with the students at the school, I decided that it would be important to meet with them so that they knew who I was. Many of them knew who I was from when I was the principal at Turner Primary School, but some of them did not. So I have had a chance to meet with classes of students. I have met with all the 3rd graders and all the 6th graders. And after sharing a bit about myself, I read a story to them I don't want to give it away because there's a couple students here who have not yet heard it, so they'll be hearing from me within a week. And I asked the students after I read the story if they could help me address the problem of bullying and people being mean to others, pushing kids on the playground, because I have addressed a lot of playground issues. And I have to tell you, the students have come up with wonderful ideas. And I really don't want to give much away, but these two I just thought were too good not to share. So here we go. The first idea that was suggested was that the students who are having a problem have a quiet place, free from distractions, where they can go to work it out with adult support. The second idea is that the student who is doing the bullying and the student who is being bullied go to a room together and do arts and crafts. That was one of my favorites. There are many more ideas that the students have come up with, and these lessons will continue, and as long as I'm at Turner Elementary School, I plan to meet frequently with students and their teachers. I have also had the opportunity to meet with students and their grown-ups to listen to concerns and work to address them together. Recently, I saw firsthand what impact social media can have on our children. I've talked to many students, and several of them have not been very happy with me, but I stressed that apps and websites that families choose to use it's a family decision. It's not my decision. What I did try to point out is that the impact social media can have on their relationships with peers. All of these incidents that have happened at school are documented. I have documented. Protocols and policies are followed, and those who need to know are brought into the conversation. I'm really enjoying my time working with the students and staff at Turner Elementary School. They are wonderful, and they have some great ideas. I also have been helping to support the Transportation and Facilities Department since last fall. In this role, I've been able to hear from parents about concerns with bus behavior, listen to drivers' concerns, watch bus videos, and investigate behavior reports. I even took an opportunity to ride on the bus just before February break. Next month, training for our kitchen, custodial, and transportation staff will be provided with an in-person training presented by a licensed clinical social worker. The topic will be bullying, suicide awareness, and child sexual abuse and prevention. We are beginning these trainings with this particular group of staff intentionally. These are our folks who are in positions to hear something or see something. And we all need all of our staff working together with families and our students to address the needs of our school community. And as I close tonight, well, I guess I have a few more things to add, but I'll say this. I would like to say that I believe by working together, we can address the concerns that are brought to our attention. Students have great ideas on how we can help them, and we need to listen to them. Families know their students and can provide us with critical information. And staff have training and expertise to address these concerns and support students. Open and respectful communication will allow us to address each and every issue that is known. And Kim, I don't know if you want me to talk a little bit about the mental health first aid training?
Yeah, absolutely. I would very much do so.
Okay. So mental health first aid training. A while back, I think it was in December, I made mention that our district had been part of a grant awarded for 5 years to provide free mental health first aid training to any and all of our staff and our community, including our families. So March 18th, our first group of staff members, our secretaries and our school nurses, will participate in mental health first aid training. And the best way that I can describe it is, if we think about typical first aid, it's what you do right away when there's an injury. So mental health first aid is like this. It's given until appropriate treatment and support are received or until the crisis resolves itself. Our secretaries and our nurses have been dealing with our student, not only their physical needs and injuries, but also their mental health. They have been on the front lines of phone calls and complaints and concerns, and I believe it's important to start with this group of staff so that we can properly train them so that they will be able to properly help our students and our families. And I think that's all I have to add.
Thank you. Kim, did you have additional to add to this?
Well, I do have a copy of the surveys that we had used pre-pandemic, which would be great data, and I want to give those to board members.
Thank you, folks, for your presentations on the work that's ongoing and for your candor in acknowledging that this is not a big secret. Things are not perfect, and we have lots of folks in our school community that have been under tremendous stress and continue to be under tremendous stress. And it was fantastic to hear about some of the student ideas and to definitely get a sense that these guys know what's going on. They know. Lots of times they have lots better idea than some of the adult folks of us, and that's definitely cool to have them involved in those conversations as well. So thank you, and I think board members, as we move forward with survey information that will not only give us more interesting data points around where people are today, we'll also have those information from the before days as well. To be able to quantify a little bit more just what differences we are seeing in our school communities. So were there board members that had questions for any of the administrators that shared information? Crystal?
I have just like three kind of just need some clarification. Is an incident report different from the online bullying report? Are they completely different? Or are they sort of the same? They're completely different?
They're completely different.
Okay. Is there any way that we could, for a future discussion around this, like maybe when the survey comes out, that is going to get sent to families, can we get a report on how many like active bullying reports that are like currently being investigated? I don't know that I don't know how to say this, like, we as the board, we aren't privy to any of these things because it's, student privacy, so it's super hard to be up here because we truly don't know. And at least even if it's a quantifiable number, is it 5, is it 20? But in the end, it doesn't matter. One is too many. So if we can somehow quantify that. And then my last one was that we had received an email earlier today from our nurse at Leeds Central, Christina Cloutier, regarding a resilience coach. And I wasn't sure because we had talked about how we might be using ESSER funds to do funding for social workers, if that is something that we could look into. That's it.
Thank you. Kim, did you want to touch on that, or is that simply something that we'll add to the discussion? Yeah, absolutely. Yep, and that's an email that board members received this afternoon with some great brainstorming, and I think board members also received a pretty cool video this afternoon that had some kiddos starring in it and kind of sharing some of the work that they're doing on anti-bullying, so that was a fun thing to receive as well. Do we have other board members with questions for some of our administrators? Jessica?
Just a quick question. So
you have a microphone too. Your very own microphone.
Talk loudly? No.
It's like right by your left hand.
Hello. This one works. Okay.
Thank
So
you.
just a quick question about the school climate survey that you passed out. So that's something that we have done previously. So when you talked about comparing results and data, does that mean that this is the survey that we are going to be putting out to families?
This is the survey that, after some research, the administrators would like to recommend that we use because we do have pre-COVID data and because there's the ability to keep results from year to year. So it's not, it was developed, hold on, I wrote it. It was developed through the PBIS and UConn.
No, you did. So my second piece to that was we had talked like what we would like to see from this, who we would like the survey to go to. Does this survey have that ability to go to staff, parents, students,
There are
that gamut?
There are 3 different surveys, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Board members have any other questions for administrators that presented on this? Again, thanks for your presentations this evening and for acknowledging that this is an ongoing conversation. There isn't one, there isn't one agenda item that either fixes or magically changes any of this. It's a set of ongoing conversations, and we'll certainly look forward to that and look forward to having those survey data as well to inform that and to see what additional supports we need. We talked about social workers, we talked about the mental health first aid training, and certainly want to continue that conversation around what's best moving forward as well. So that brings us to a point of rewinding on our agenda and going back to agenda item 7, and that is public comment. So I will read through just to make sure everybody's on the same page with our policy on public comment, since I think I paraphrased a little too much last time, and we'll kind of do a refresher on that. Members of the public may address the board within the guidelines provided in this policy, and that's BEDH, and that's public participation at board meetings. The chair shall be responsible for maintaining proper order and compliance with these guidelines. The following guidelines shall apply to public participation at board meetings. Citizens and employees of the school unit are welcome to participate as provided in this policy. Others may be recognized to speak at the chair's discretion. Individual employees and/or employee groups will not be permitted to discuss matters for which complaint or grievance procedures are provided. The chair may limit the time allotted for comments on a particular topic, as well as the time each individual may speak, and we are at 5 minutes on that at this point. In the event of a sizable audience, the chair may require persons interested in speaking to sign up so that they may be called on in a fair and efficient manner. And I think from a practical standpoint, we've had a sign-up sheet at the podium. I think we struggled with having a pen that worked last time, so please do holler if that pen does not appear to be working, because we do want to make sure we recognize that folks have come up and spoken to the board in this forum. During the time set aside for public participation, the chair will be responsible for recognizing all speakers who must identify themselves as they begin talking. Speakers are not permitted to share gossip, make defamatory comments, or use abusive or vulgar language. All speakers are to address the chair and direct questions or comments to particular board members or the superintendent only with approval of the chair. Requests for information or concerns that require further research may be referred to the superintendent to be addressed at a later time. Members of the board and the superintendent may ask questions of any person who addresses the board, but are expected to refrain from arguing or debating issues. Questions must be addressed through the chair. No complaints or allegations will be allowed at board meetings concerning any person employed by the school system or against particular students. And this is one that's really important if we're to maintain a sense of collaboration and some civility. We definitely need to keep track on that one. Personal matters or complaints concerning student or staff issues will not be considered in a public meeting, but will be referred through established policies and procedures. If something more near, and just to elaborate on that a little bit, if something more nearly resembles a complaint that folks have not felt like they've been able to address through the various levels within our schools, the policy that speaks to that directly is KE, and those are complaints. In order to make efficient use of meeting time, the board discourages duplication or repetition of comments to the board. The board requests that groups or organizations be represented by designated spokespersons. The chair has the authority to stop any presentation that violates these guidelines or the privacy rights of others. Persons who disrupt the meeting may be asked to leave, and the chair may request law enforcement assistance as necessary to restore order. So with that, we'd certainly welcome our first speaker.
Hey, Jeff Marquis Turner here again. I'm going to go through this quickly because it's still about bullying, and we talked about some of the policies and things that were written on the site, and we've heard a lot about what the schools are doing to prevent it and teach and learn about it. That's all fine and well, but policies are only good for the majority. There are those examples where things slip through the crack, and with all due respect, as I've said many times, my incidents with my particular son predate the pandemic. So in my instance, it's somewhat, I don't want to say insulting, but to try to blame it on the pandemic. I think it was worsened by the pandemic. But again, as I stated before, my son was placed back into class with his bully from a few years ago after coming out of the pandemic, a mistake that was admitted to me personally by different administrators and the principal of the school. It's direct from the MSAD 52 website, the Student System-Wide Code of Conduct Policy, JIC. Article 2, Code of Conduct. All students are expected to comply with the Code of Conduct and all related board policies and school rules. Further down, page 31, along with the above-mentioned general behavioral expectations, the Student Code of Conduct outlines additional expectations for student behavior in Article 4 of this policy. Violations of this Code of Conduct may result in disciplinary action. Disciplinary action consequences depend upon the seriousness of the violation, and the student's prior disciplinary record will range from verbal warning for a minor offense, misconduct, and including expulsion for the most serious offenses. Behavior that also violates the law may refer to law enforcement. Article 4, subsection A, violence and threats. Students will not engage in violent, threatening behavior. Prohibited behavior includes fighting, assault, battery, taking hostage, threats, commit violence, and includes bullying. Subsection E of Article 4, bullying defined. Bullying means any physical act or gesture that in any way a reasonable person should expect will have the effect of physical harming a student or damaging a student's property, placing a student in reasonable fear of physical harm or damage to his or her person, substantially disrupting the instructional program or the orderly operation of the school, or is so severe and so persistent or pervasive that it creates intimidating, hostile educational environment for the student who's being bullied. In this case, that would be my son. Article 5, removal of disruptive, violent, threatening students. Section 1, students are disruptive, violent, or threatening bodily harm will be removed from the classroom, school buses, or other property when necessary to maintain order and safety. Student discipline, policy JK. The board, that would be you folks, expects the following principles to guide the development and implementation of school rules. Parents should be actively involved in the process of preventing and resolving disciplinary problems at school, hence my repeated attempts. Suspension of students, policy JKD. The MSAD 52 Board of Directors delegates to the principals or designee the authority to suspend disobedient and disorderly students for a period of not to exceed 10 school days. Suspensions longer than that may be imposed by the board at their discretion. Prohibited conduct. Engaging in the following conduct on school property while in attendance at school or other school-sponsored activities and any time, place as such directly interferes with the operation is prohibited. Violent, threatening, or bullying behavior, including but not limited to fighting, assault, and/or battery, taking hostages, goes on, verbal or written statements, harassments, disrupt the school program. Speed reading here because I know I'm timed. Article 2 of the Code of Conduct, down at the bottom, along with the above mentioned, that was this one. Bullying. Bullying is prohibited. Bullying and cyberbullying. The board does not condone and will take action in response to the consequences. Again, it talks about has reasonable person physical harm, damage, interfering with their basically well-being at school. The big one here is that it says students who violate the policy, again, will be subject to discipline, which may include suspension and expulsion. The board retains the right to impose disciplinary consequences for bullying. So what I'm getting at with this here is, I've gone through all the procedures in the process of talking to teachers, talking to things, and I respect what they're doing, and I respect that you guys are talking about this now, and it's really come to the forefront. But in my particular instance, I've gone through these channels, and your own policies talk about things that can include up to suspension and expulsion of the student. In my case, I'm not necessarily that I want a kid to be suspended. I've never even asked for that. All I asked was for the student bullying my son that the school admitted that was not supposed to be in the same class be moved. So my thought was, if the punishments can include up to that in the own policy, and the board is designated, I still have 20 seconds, is designated to make those decisions and enforce discipline, what do I have to do? It doesn't seem like I'm asking a lot for my son to be removed. By the other kid moving, I'm not saying expel, I'm not saying even suspend. Keep him away from my son like he was 2 years ago. We didn't have any issues. The treatment should not be to punish my son by rescheduling his day. So it's the policy that's written down. It's public.
Yep, and that's exactly why my suggestion around the very specific nature of this, I think we need to consider policy KE, and that's a specific complaint sort of policy. And we can certainly follow up on that with the superintendent and myself with you afterwards.
But I've done that, and it hasn't gone anywhere. And so that's why I've been coming to these meetings to speak to you guys, because it says the board can enact disciplinary action. And here we are having this back and forth, but we're just saying the same thing, and we're going in circles. Meanwhile, my son is still tormented.
And we're not, though, because we haven't really followed the processes that are described in the complaint procedure. So that's different from public comment. That's a specific process. So like I said, I think that would be great if either you and I, or you and I and the superintendent follow up on that afterwards.
Today?
Thank you.
You're talking after this meeting?
Yep.
Perfect.
Good evening. Excuse my water bottle. So last week's meeting, I'd asked if we could get in writing from the company that sold the air purification system that it takes care of the virus. The reason I asked that is because if it does so, they'll put it in writing. Because right now, the only thing that's in writing is what comes from the superintendent saying that it takes care of the virus. This puts you guys on the liability end of it. I'm trying to help you out here. That's why I'm asking for this information from the company. Because what I've seen, it's proven that it does not take care of any viruses, as a matter of fact. So that needs to be addressed. If you get that in writing, it's on them, not you. Something I think it's really crucial, what the gentleman just spoke about, it's important what you do today that makes the difference. You know, I'm a little bit old school. I was in high school and grammar school and all that stuff a long time ago. And if you were misbehaving in a class, whether it was swearing, whether it was slapping another kid, whether it was whatever, you were told not to do it. You do it again, your name gets on the board. You do it again, you get a check mark. You stay after school. Nobody likes staying after school, especially when you have to do more schoolwork. If you got more than 2 checks, we were all ball players back in the day. 3 strikes, you're out. And trust me, none of us wanted to go sit down with the principal. None of us. That was the last place you wanted to be, because the principal got in touch with your parents. And if the principal didn't do something more than get in touch with the parents, well, parents took care of it on the back end. At home. Making a quick step to get to an end solution quicker is not necessarily any of us coming to you. It's allowing the teachers to do their job. And yes, I encourage, you know, helping those that are doing well aspire and do better. But those that aren't are preventing those from wanting to aspire and do better. And they need to be taken out of the classroom. And the parents need to deal with it, not the teachers. Maybe a guidance counselor can come in. But there's some real simple, easy steps that all of us can use in our own family lives and in the school system as well. So I also mentioned last week about critical race theory, social emotional learning. I would have been here years ago had I known that Common Core was going to take away from what the parents could actually help their kids with at home. Common Core math, my 3rd grade daughter would come home from school asking me for help, and I could not help her. For one, I don't have patience to write down 100 different squares and then show her this way over complex way to do 2 plus 2. Flashcards are what we used when I went to school. Yeah, I know, that's a long time ago. But they worked. It creates memory. I'm a little concerned with what's going on with critical race theory, or call it social emotional learning, whatever you want to call it. And that's not going to improve the behaviors that we're seeing in the kids in the schools today. That's not only going to pin them against their parents, it's going to pin them against each other. And the bullying will get worse. Have a good evening.
Hi, my name is Jackson Goddard. I go to Turner Elementary School and I'm in 4th grade. I'm going to talk about bullying so I can know how bullying has made me feel. I've been bullied before. I've been bullied. The bully made fun of my shirt, said that I look ugly, and that made me feel really sad. He also tripped me, punched me in the eye, shoved me, making me fall on my knees and hands. I want bullying to end forever and always. I think you should put teachers all around the hallways to help stop it and teach kindness. I also want to thank you for listening to me. Everyone have a great day.
Great job, Jackson.
Hi, I'm Ella Myers, and I'm here to talk about bullying. I've experienced bullying, and I've seen it happen to my friends. And we have all these things like Wildcat Pride cards that try to get really good. But that's all forced. Kids act good and say what teachers want to hear just to get a Wildcat Pride card, but then are cruel to others. The kindness thing, that's forced also, and no one does it proper. Kids get all these reminders to be nice and don't bully, but people still do it. They still bully. And there is so much toxic behavior, it makes school unbearable. And I've heard the R word and things related to that so many times, my whole experience at TES, and nothing happened to the kids who say it. They write a reflection, and those don't work. You're forced to write them. In my opinion, students need to be held accountable for their toxic behavior. And by toxic behavior, I mean students teasing one another and saying hurtful things about others in a classroom full of kids who are listening. Of course, I appreciate everything that my teachers do for us, and I love everything and every one of my teachers. But things need to be less forced, addressed, taken seriously, and kids need to be held accountable for their toxic behavior. Thank you.
I have 3 kids that go to this district. I have one in 5th grade, a son. I have a daughter that's in 9th grade who's tried killing herself twice due to bullying. The policies that have been in play have not worked. This has been going on, and I just got the JIG forms from the incidents that have happened in September, October, November, and December. We've had to pull my kid out of this school and have her do remote learning and tutoring for her to stay alive, because if she continues to go to this school, she'll die. A kid every day is telling her to kill herself, and it's too bad that she has not succeeded. That's just one of the incidents. What about the JIG form for kids that have IEPs, or the GICK, part 2, it's called an E2. What about those forms? Why aren't they being filled out and filed? Why is it that I'm now just getting these original forms from these incidents that have happened in September, October, November, and December?
So these sound like really specific incidents and really school specific. So are there folks within that school that you're speaking with on this currently?
Well, I've gone in circles and nothing's gotten done. There's a safety plan that was in play, and that plan got broken. It didn't fall through. We've had, I would say, at least 7 different meetings. We've had at least 4 different IEP meetings just this year. Do you realize that one kid normally only has 1 IEP meeting a year? So now at this time, the district's paying a tutorer for my kid to get tutored out of school.
So what you're recounting is completely heartbreaking, and I also hope that we have folks both in that building and in the superintendent's office that are following up on that, and I would certainly encourage you to do that.
I have, and she's been at the meetings as well. They all have, and I have. I'm asking for you guys to look at this now as well.
Thank you.
I wish I weren't going after her because I just want to cry. Rachel Mishu, I got a 5-year-old kiddo at Green Central School. This Monday, March 7th, my 5-year-old was having afternoon school snack and complained to his teacher that his belly hurt. And of course, my phone just complained to his teacher that his belly hurt. He told his teacher that a big kid had hit him in the stomach and that he told the bus driver. My 5-year-old was then sent to talk to Mr. Parker for further investigation. His words to me, he goes upstairs where the big kids go. He punched me 2 times. I told the bus driver, but she didn't hear me. So I told her again and she moved my seat. So the imagine I created in my head, like it's horrible, you know? One of my boy, 5-year-old, being hurt by a big kid, you know, makes me nauseous. Both of the kids sitting literally right behind the bus, my small for his age 5-year-old. Like, you know, he's a skinny little kid, little blondie, long lashed, bright blue eyes, big smile, just happy to ride at the bus, going to school that morning. Then gets punched twice in the stomach by a big kid. So that that image did make me nauseous, but how it was handled afterwards is what really upsets me the most. To keep my son safe, my son his seat was moved immediately, which is great. However, that response was not enough. Why did a 5-year-old have to go to school? Why did a 5-year-old have to report the incident to the bus driver and then again to his teacher? Why did my son's teacher not know he was hit in the stomach on the bus? If my little guy hadn't told his teacher, would the school even know he was hit in the stomach? Would he have told me when he got home that night? Did his little belly hurt all morning? Oh my gosh.
So I would definitely encourage you to follow up with the principal, and
I
obviously
did.
these are
I did, and Mr.
personal.
Parker did a fantastic job. I'm sorry, after several conversations with Mr. Parker, what I found out is that there's no, I need to get much there. Okay, so after speaking with Mr. Parker several times, I got answers to many questions that I had. The responses raised much concern. Did you know that the Transportation Department is not required to file an incident report in a timely, effective, proactive manner? The incident took place Monday morning. However, the school received the incident report very late in the afternoon. In fact, the report was submitted just shortly after Mr. Parker got off the phone with transportation inquiring about the incident. The delay in communication is not acceptable. Frankly, I can't wrap my head around that. I understand that drivers are busy, we all are. However, the drivers have a radio, which provides direct contact with the school. In transit, a summary of the incident could easily be radioed into Green Central School. The advance notice allows an administration time to prepare themselves for kiddos to be seen in the office right away. At school drop-off, before the school driver ever pulls away from Green Central School, a more detailed description of the incident could be reported to the school's administration. Both children should have gone from the bus directly to the office for the incident to be further investigation. Did you know that teachers are not necessarily notified of an incident? I do not understand this. With today's technology, communication is easier than it has ever been. My child spends pretty much the entire day with his teacher. She is the one adult in the building who absolutely needs to know that there was an incident on the bus. Allowing her to monitor his emotional and physical well-being throughout the day. Monitoring that doesn't need to be a big deal, like don't make it a big thing, but receiving communication would assist his teacher should there be any red flags. Did you know that the school have to request bus video and they don't even know how long it will be before they'll receive it? This incident occurred Monday morning. Video was received Wednesday. I find the delay unacceptable given today's advancement in technology. Mr. Parker had a situation to handle quickly and waited 3 days. Waiting 3 days certainly made his job responsibilities more difficult. Some minor incident reports can be delayed. However, verbal and physical aggression should never be delayed. Monday morning, the bus driver should have been required to take 2 minutes to communicate to Green Central. Monday morning, the bus driver should have been required to take 2 minutes to say to the transportation department, we need to pull this video and send it to Green Central. Monday morning.
We're right at 5 minutes now, and I certainly would encourage you to continue those follow-up conversations with Mr. Parker as well, so
It's the policies that have to change, though. Mr. Parker doesn't make those.
Thank you.
My name is Joe Martin. I'm a freshman at Levitt High School. I'm just here to follow up the whole lacrosse situation. Last week, it sounded like it was given an answer of it's financial. It's been that answer since October, I think. We looked into it more. We had a petition. We had 138 signatures last I checked, and multiple people said they'd donate to help raise the funds to let us play. I have no clue how the co-op process would happen. I had asked for a walkthrough, and having gotten answers, I went to Edward Little's athletic director, never heard back. I don't understand, and I was hoping that someone could give me a walkthrough on the process. If we can come up with the funds on our own, I don't understand how it's still a financial problem.
So I'll try to answer a little bit and kind of recap what we talked about in our last meeting, because we did have this on as an agenda item as a follow-up to an earlier question, and I think what Mr. Shaw described was a lack of capacity on our part to be able to manage the program, and it obviously he got into some larger issues around how many different sports we have, how many hours there are in the day, and what capacity we have to provide adequate supervision, as well as the additional layer of whether there's availability within another local program, and I don't know that there actually is availability. And I think we touched on a bunch of different things, including swimming, and swimming being kind of a different individualized sport versus a team sport. And I know that's that doesn't answer your question from the standpoint of these are the 3 steps that you would take to do something different. I would anticipate that on a pretty regular basis, Mr. Shaw and Mr. LaRoche update the board on how many sports we have, what ability we have to support those sports. We made a change 2 years ago, 3 years ago. We previously had a combined athletic director and assistant principal. The board elected to change that to a dedicated athletic director. So that's definitely a conversation the board is used to having and anticipates having again. What does it look like to support additional sports? And if that's something that folks are interested in doing going forward. So hopefully that answers your question.
Kinda. You had said that the supervision was another one of the problems. I feel like we went over that last time, and it was kind of come to the conclusion of the swim team. We had asked Mr. Shaw, and he had said he has no clue about the supervision with the swim team. As far as we know, there's not supervision from Levitt with our co-op swim team.
So from the standpoint of rediscussing that whole thing, I mean, I would prefer not to this evening. We talked about it as an agenda item last time. I think if the board had the opportunity, if they were interested in making a decision other than what Mr. Shaw was putting into practice and recommending, they had the opportunity to do that. I guess what I'm just trying to share is that there are ongoing conversations around how many sports we have, what sports fit the interests of our student body most appropriately, and what sports we're able to offer to both our male and female student populations as well. So I wish there was a simple answer. Most times there isn't, and for that I apologize, but hopefully that answers your question.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Good job, Joey.
Jimmy Childs from Leeds. So how do the amendments to the budget work? Is there any way that, because I remember I mentioned last time that our school needs a resource officer, and it seems like we really do need something like that. I mean, I don't know if that's something you guys discuss, or I mean, if we just, you know, with all the bullying and all the other stuff, it seems like resource officers, people that can help mentally or whatever, very important to our school. I can't imagine the position that these people are in, talking about their kids like that. I know how I feel about my kid being suffocated in a mask, and I would actually be driven crazy if I had to be in the position that they're in, saying what they said. My heart goes out to them. And I really hope that this school can do something, a lot of, like things about bullying, people who don't get along, maybe they can find things in common. Like if 2 kids that didn't get along were to be put in a room together or just had the opportunity to somebody talk to them and, they could find common ground maybe, if that's possible. If some people are too far gone, that's one thing, but, an early start for that. And, it's really nice to see you guys all with no masks on. I really thought about smiling a lot up here, but, with what some of these parents said, it's kind of hard to smile. But, it's nice, and I'm sure that our kids in school are really happy this week. Really good, positive. No masks. Would I be able to ask a quick question to the faculty over there, Ms. Bullard?
You would need to direct your question to me.
All right. I just would like to know if, through our school, if it's more, less, or equal to 20% of people wearing a mask. Maybe they could show with a thumbs up, thumbs down, or just, if there's...
So in follow-up to our comments last time about not necessarily making a big deal of the masks, or if we're going to call it bullying, or we're going to call it calling people out for either wearing masks or not, I'm not really sure how that question is germane at all to our discussion.
Like if like people that are like...
No, I understood your question.
Okay. You think that's bullying?
I think it's not a helpful question.
I was just trying to get an idea on, because 65% of the survey seems different.
I don't think it's a helpful question, so it's not one that I will pose to administrators here this evening.
All right, sorry about that. But, so yeah, You know, I'm sorry for you guys going through all the problems, and I thank all the administrators and everybody for doing what they're doing. My son in school is very happy. He's coming home smiling, says all the kids are happy. You know, other kids, that people are happy, you know, even with all the bad stuff going on. I think the mask being removed was a good choice. And, you know, and let's continue on some improvements, and I hope to see you guys April 1st.
All right, hello, my name is Ashley Vandiver. I am the mom to 3 students at MSAD 52, 2 at Turner Primary School and 1 at Turner Elementary School. And I am here tonight also to talk about the bullying issue that is ongoing at Turner Elementary School. And I will also echo what Jeff had said. It's not a new problem. It's a problem that has been ongoing. Yes, the last year has become exceptionally worse. I have a 4th grader who has gone from loving school to hating school. And just 2 weeks ago, he said on the playground that he did not want to go to school anymore and he wished he was dead. And that was a call that I got at my office. And I think that why so many parents are here, and I don't want to speak for anybody else, is because we love our kids and we see where this can end. And at 9 years old, when there is a child that no longer wants to go to school because of how horrible he feels about himself because of a small group of bullies that continue to pick at the same children over and over and over, it's not okay. And it's not an individual problem. This is a school-wide problem, why there are so many people here in support of this. And it is a fundamental problem that needs to change. This abuse, it's not just physical, it's not just emotional. He has been sexually abused at school. I have brought that to the attention of teachers, of administrators, and each incident has been followed up as we've reported it. But again, the problem is this is an ongoing fundamental problem. We have heard back responses that my child isn't being singled out, so it's not an individual problem because these children are disrupting entire classrooms. They're throwing chairs across the room. My child comes home afraid that his friends are going to get hurt. And it's not a safe environment. He tells me he does not want to go to school because he does not feel safe. And for a 9-year-old to say that they would rather be dead than go to school because they are concerned about the bullying that happens on the playground, in the classroom, in front of teachers, where it is physical, emotional, it's so much for a parent to handle. So I understand that these are small individual things, but it's not. It's across the board, we're seeing this, multiple children, and really something needs to be done about this at a school board level to make these kids feel safe in school. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your story, and I certainly encourage you to continue those conversations. I know Ms. Gill has talked quite a bit about some of the work that she's doing in the school now, and I would hope that those conversations continue and we can continue to improve.
My name is Crystal Nicholas from Green. I want to talk a bit about masks, and that ties into bullying and advocacy. Before we close this chapter on masks in our lives, I hope we can pause to recognize that mistakes were made, lest we repeat our errors. First, to my knowledge, masking harms were never acknowledged by any school official. It's as if they never existed. Conveniently, mask-induced hypoxia shares many symptoms with COVID. That is, shortness of breath, difficulty breathing, fatigue, headaches, nausea. With a little sleight of hand, the administration could send those kids home with COVID. And from talking to other parents, that's just what they did. There were never any mask injuries. These were likely recorded as COVID symptoms. We were told that our children's health was so important. Yet when we reported that our children were sickened by school policy, we received blank stares and silence. Our children were never asked if they were able to safely tolerate an asphyxiating medical device without a prescription. Children were not monitored for symptoms of hypoxia, and your average family does not do a yearly brain scan to check for damage from slow suffocation. Learning loss will be attributed to learning to live during a COVID pandemic, not to mask wearing. The best way to guarantee results is to manipulate the narrative. Secondly, forced masking violated laws. This was never discussed. Anyone can verify this by looking up our Constitution, the Maine Constitution, statute laws, laws on child abuse, reckless behavior, negligence, child endangerment, and definition of torture. And yet, file BCA and MSAD 52's policy states, quote, "The school board will abide by federal, state, and local laws and regulations," end quote. Indeed, the superintendent's bond, that is, general liability insurance, states in part that it excludes the holder from coverage from, quote, "any liability for damage arising out of negligent acts, errors, or omissions of a covered person with respect to compliance with any federal, state, or local statutory or common law." Lastly, a lack of respect for parents as advocates, and indeed a lack of advocates altogether, is crippling our school. I am cautious about any claims the school may make about its commitments to student safety. Students have been bullied by the very people who are supposed to protect them. An underage minor student is unlikely to be able to advocate as well for themselves as a parent would. In File KB Section L, the board encourages parents to make every effort to provide for the physical well-being of their children. Well, we try, but it is hard if your policies are what is making them sick, and you fail to honor us as knowing what is best for our children. File KB Section F states, "It is in the interest of the board that the school promote parent involvement by respecting parents as partners in decisions affecting children and families. Your job is to build trust, not resentment, and make this a great school and a safe one." An elected official recently told me that 8,000 children have fled the public school system in Maine, largely due to suffocating mandates. They didn't fear COVID, they fled from tyranny. In leaving masking as we did, without addressing the wrongs and the mistakes, we leave the door open for our children's health to again be held hostage by bureaucrats. But we can prevent that, every one of us, by putting the children first, speaking the truth, and continuing to advocate tirelessly for our kids. Thank you for this. I just want to add, if I have an extra 30 seconds, that my child was bullied in preschool. Another child in the playground said they were going to kill him. I had great difficulty getting him to go back to preschool, and that affected our decision to homeschool. Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to participate in public comment? If not, thank you folks for participating this evening, and certainly those are pretty rugged stories that folks are sharing, and I think our school staff, our administrators, and certainly our board understand that this is no laughing matter as far as moving forward and continuing these conversations. I think we all understand as well that there are no shortage of opportunities for all of us to see behavior that is pretty unsettling, whether it's talking heads trying to outdo one another on television, whether it's algorithms that are directing us all to ever more delightful things in the world of social media, or whether it's in-person interactions that are uncivil and discourteous at best and mean as well. I would encourage everyone to continue to work together and understand that the board is committed to doing that as well. So old business. We don't appear to have any old business. That brings us to the consent agenda. I would entertain a motion for the list. Motion from Yuri. Do we have a second? Second from Crystal. All those in favor? Unanimous? That brings us to new business. Item 10.1, approval of a $1,000 donation to the Leeds Central School Library. Do we have a motion on that one? Crystal, do we have a second? Second from Yuri. Discussion on this one? Thank you. Yeah, exactly. Seeing none, all those in favor? Unanimous. Brings us to item 10.2, and item 10.2 is to report the completion of the probationary period for the following employee: Kathleen McNeil, Levitt Area High School custodian. Are there any other items of business we need to take up this evening? If not, I would entertain a motion for adjournment. Don't all jump at once, Crystal. Crystal has made a motion to adjourn. Do we have a second? Yuri is seconding. I think Kyle is interested in doing that as well. All those in favor? Unanimous. Thanks, everybody, and we will see you on the 24th here in the same place. From a budget standpoint, we'll look at our revisit list, warrant Article 4, warrant